Guys, imagine this. We wake up one day and our whole economy is digitized.
Money would be zeros and ones, no need for physical cash.
Yes. Imagine all transactions happening online. The global scale of this change would be insane.
You know, that's actually kind of scary.
Scary, you say? To some it may seem so, Javier.
Agreed, Bo. And it's not just the regular folks like us who will feel the repercussions. Think about the banks.
Banks? Never crossed my mind, John.
And what about the retail industries? They still heavily rely on physical cash.
Now that's interesting. Retailers will have to adapt or, let's face it, die.
And let's not forget the new regulations governments will need to implement.
Tech skills would be more in demand than ever before.
And don't even get me started on cryptocurrency.
Good point, Bo. It seems a digital economy would upend traditional banking systems and retail.
What interesting times we live in, right? There's a constant tug of war between traditional and digital banking. So, John, what happens if digitization fully takes over?
Well, firstly, there might be a major shift in the workforce as traditional banking jobs become obsolete. Picture this: banking operations move online completely, reducing the need for physical workspace. Think virtual bank branches.
Like turning a tangible bank into a website where you can handle your transactions, huh?
Exactly that, Javier. On the consumer side, the convenience would be monumental. No more rush hour traffic, long lines, or business hours restrictions. Banking would be just a click away.
That's a good point. But wouldn't this shift need a massive investment in new technology and security?
Absolutely, Bo. Getting back to the services, our credit cards, checks, ATM services, everything might get an upgrade or even cease to exist in traditional forms. And to top it off, fintech companies would see their prominence skyrocket, providing platforms and solutions for digitized banking. It's like watching a sci-fi movie turn into reality.
But, thinking it from the bank side, the initial transition might be rigorous. Yet in the long run, a digital economy could prove to be more cost-effective than brick-and-mortar operations, right?
Yes, Bo. It's a win-win in the end. The wave of fintech adoption may be big, but it's not impossible to ride.
So we're not just spiraling toward digital currency and services, but possibly witnessing how a new era of job market evolves. So would cash become as extinct as dinosaurs?
In a fully digitized economy, yes, it probably would. Transaction methods as we know them, like cash payments and check clearances, would undergo a digital transformation, or even disappear.
Wow, so no more ATMs or waiting for checks to clear? That's definitely something to ponder.
Yes, and this has a wide-reaching ripple effect. It's not just about us as individuals. Businesses that handle physical cash will also be affected.
Right. If I'm introing a new diner, say a funky food truck, and cash disappears, my whole business model might need an overhaul.
Precisely. Businesses will need to have infrastructures in place to accept digital payments. Some will manage it well, but others, especially small businesses, might struggle initially. For instance, think of vendors at a farmer's market or a hot dog stand in the city center. They might find the digitization a bit daunting, even isolating, as they're currently operating primarily on cash basis.
Not to mention the security concerns. Handling cash comes with its risks, but going digital exposes businesses more to cyber threats. How do they navigate through these challenges?
Bo, that's an excellent question. It would indeed require a robust and reliable security system. Also, consumer trust would be key in such a scenario.
Well, it seems like the transition won't be easy for everyone. But I guess, like with any change, there's always some confusion and chaos.
Very true, Bo. Though the future might seem intimidating, it could mean a world of convenience and efficiency if approached with the right mindset and resources. There's no stopping the digital wave, but it's crucial we stay afloat amid the tide.
It's intriguing to consider the impact on jobs and industries as we switch to a digitized economy. There would be an obvious shift in roles, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. The landscape of employment might experience a tectonic shift. Many traditional roles might face an existential crisis.
I can see how that could threaten people with traditional jobs. But wouldn't there also be potential for new job roles? Maybe even more competitive jobs?
New jobs would certainly emerge. In fact, tech skills might become immensely valuable. In a world fueled by digital currency, computer coders, blockchain experts, and cybersecurity professionals would be in high demand.
As a web developer, I can appreciate how digital transformation is already creating jobs. But what about industries, John? Which ones do you think would benefit from this? And which ones might take a hit?
Well, financial sectors, particularly banking and investment, could see a major transformation. Alongside, industries like retail, logistics, even the energy sector would need to adapt to this new paradigm. On the contrary, industries that revolve around handling cash or physical transactions might struggle.
That makes sense. It's like we're venturing into uncharted waters. There's an element of uncertainty, but that's how evolution works, right? Old gives way to the new.
Well put, Bo. It's all about adaptation and resilience.
So I guess while we can't completely predict the future, it's clear that a digitized economy will shake things up at many levels. As industries adapt to this cashless society, what might we see, John?
In my opinion, retailers would have to revamp their business models. In the absence of physical cash, transactions will become entirely digital. They will have to invest in point-of-service devices and apps, upgrade their online platforms, and consider data security as well.
Makes me wonder about the power disruption too. Retailers and small businesses, dependent on cash transactions, will be vastly affected. They might need to take drastic measures to cope with the changes.
That's valid, Bo. On the other end of the spectrum, there would be an upsurge in tech-related professions. The demand for coding, blockchain technologies, cybersecurity, AI, and machine learning would skyrocket.
The way I see it, while a completely digitized economy may sound intimidating, it also opens the door for exciting possibilities. But is going cashless only about convenience? Or are we looking at bigger picture here, like increasing transparency?
Definitely a bigger picture, Javier. Benefits can be more than mere convenience. With digitization, traceability of transactions increases substantially, thus reducing the scope for corruption, tax evasion, and black money. However, this would also mean giving up a certain degree of anonymity that cash transactions offered.
Right, and that circles back to privacy concerns again. The world will need a framework where digitization thrives alongside strong data protection measures. As we embrace this new phase, the role of policymakers would be crucial.
So the transition to a cashless economy is like opening Pandora's box. We can only speculate where this will lead us, and as much as it promises opportunities, it also presents enormous challenges.
So what if cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum replaced national currencies?
That's an interesting question, John. Firstly, the transactions would be decentralized. There's no central authority like a bank or government that oversees transactions. All of us would essentially become our own banks. Isn't that an exciting prospect, Javier?
It's thrilling, but Bo, wouldn't this lack of central control also mean no one would be responsible if something goes wrong?
You've hit a crucial point there, Javier. However, the technology behind cryptocurrencies, blockchain, is created in such a way that it maintains a ledger of every single transaction. So it's incredibly transparent and hard to manipulate, but the question of accountability remains.
That transparency might mean a reduction in corruption, right? Theoretically, black money and tax evasion could be nearly eradicated. We're also looking at a potential overhaul of our fiscal policies with the advent of cryptocurrencies.
Still, wouldn't this mean countries lose control over their financial policies since they can't regulate money supply?
Correct, Javier. In a digitized economy, fiscal policy as we know it could dramatically change. The traditional methods of influencing an economy, such as altering interest rates or government spending, might no longer apply.
Our world revolves around money, but what if, as we highlighted earlier, cryptocurrencies take over and every country starts adopting them? What changes do you think could transpire, John?
Crypto adoption could have massive implications on how taxes are managed, Bo. Currently, governments heavily regulate the economy through fiscal policies, but if money becomes decentralized, they'd lose this power. Implementing taxes on crypto transactions could become a major challenge. Additionally, money laundering and tax evasion would become nearly impossible to control. We'd essentially be stepping into uncharted waters. Does that scare you guys?
There's definitely some unease, But wouldn't a decoupling of money from countries allow for a more globalized economy?
On the surface, it might seem that way, Javier. Theoretically, a globalized economy would enable more equitable wealth distribution. But it won't be an easy transition. Existing laws, processes, and systems would need to be overhauled. Plus, economies can be drastically different. What works for one might not work for another.
It sounds like we'd need radical reforms and innovations to make crypto-centric economies feasible. But can these digital currencies replace our conventional monetary systems completely, John?
Well, Bo, it's complicated. Strictly speaking, cryptocurrencies are still currencies, just in digital form. But their adoption would certainly alter central banks' roles. The traditional roles we've become accustomed to, such as controlling inflation or monitoring commercial banks, would become obsolete.
Even if central banks adopt a digital format, there are still challenges, right?
Absolutely, Javier. Central banks would have to tackle issues like cyber threats and data privacy. Given that economies are intertwined, a single slip could send ripple effects globally. It's clear that the road to a fully digitized economy is a long and winding one.
How do you guys think consumer behavior might change in a fully digital economy?
This change in our economic system could drastically alter the way consumers behave. They may resort to more impulsive shopping habits because of the ease, immediacy, and arguably the detached feeling of an online transaction compared to tactile money.
True. I mean, take myself for example. I've noticed that I am prone to impulse purchases in digital environments. There's something about the lack of physicality that lessens the impact.
Wouldn't this also mean that consumers would have to rethink their attitudes toward financial security? Without the assurance of holding money in hand, we may see a rise in security and privacy concerns.
Absolutely. Concerns about data breaches and fraud could potentially change the way we look at money itself. Trust, which is already such a crucial part of an economic system, may become even more of a focal point.
I wonder what education looks like in this kind of economy. We may see financial literacy courses, including aspects of data security and internet safety.
That's a good point, Bo. Full digitization might mean we all have to become more tech-savvy and more aware of concepts like cryptographic keys, digital wallets, and blockchain technology.
It's scary and exciting at the same time, isn't it? Like we're stepping into a whole new era. In this digital era, it's not surprising to see more people choosing online shopping over going to physical stores. But when we think about a completely digitized economy, how would that amplify the current situation? Would storefronts become obsolete, only existing in the virtual space?
That's a possibility. It goes beyond saving time and avoiding crowds. It's about the consumer's entire interaction with money. Tasks like perusing products, reading reviews, adding to cart, and making the final transaction. It's all happening in one digital environment. And it's not just about convenience. Using behavioral data, retailers can provide a personalized shopping experience. This would only increase with a completely digitized economy, wouldn't it?
Could this digital economic model impact the way we perceive wealth? After all, money isn't really real. It's a social construct that we've digitized into numbers on a screen. The perception of wealth might shift to who has the most coins in their digital wallet, rather than who has the biggest house or the fanciest car.
I see where you're going, Bo. This paradigm shift would change the way we measure success. It might lead to a more equitable perception of wealth, where people judge each other based on their digital assets rather than tangible possessions.
Will this digitization make us lose touch with the tangible reality of money or wealth? Right now, if you hand over a $20 bill for something, you feel that you're parting with hard-earned money. Will seeing numbers decrease or increase in a digital sphere have the same impact?
That's almost philosophical, Javier. Perception of money is deeply personal and individual. Anyway, I'm long past associating the click of a button with the weight of a wallet, but it's not the same for everyone, and there will be a learning curve for society as a whole.
In essence, we should be preparing for an economic model that heavily leans on digital transactions. While it brings immense convenience, challenges lie in how we embrace this shift and protect our digital economy.
As we swiped left to right on our phones while going through our daily lives, have we ever paused to think about how secured our information is? Moreover, How much more intense will this concern become when every single economic activity is happening in the digital sphere?
You're right, Javier. Hacking and cyber threats are common these days, and it's a worry that magnifies in a fully digitized economy. Just imagine if your whole life savings were stolen in one swift cyber attack.
That's my cue, guys. After all, every digital payment we make, every online shopping spree, everything we do in the cyber world leaves a digital footprint. And every single one of these footprints is potentially vulnerable to be tracked and misused by a third party.
It's like dropping breadcrumbs in a forest full of hungry birds, leading them right to your doorstep, isn't it?
Exactly, Javier. And that's why privacy protection systems need to be robust. What's the use of blazing forward into a digitized economy if our entire personal and financial lives can be stolen in a blink?
Well, there might be a way to safeguard our digital economy. Just like how we learn to lock our homes, we'll need stronger cyber laws, advanced security measures, and public awareness on cyber safety. Encryption must become the new normal, much like seatbelts in cars.
Bose hit it on the head. No one wants to wake up finding their digital wallet empty. The government must proactively set standards and regulations, making them outright requirements for digital systems. Mandatory data protection provisions should be in place before moving ahead with digitizing the economy.
So the key takeaway here is, while a fully digitized economy presents us with a lot of convenience, without robust cybersecurity and strict laws to protect our privacy, are we just opening ourselves up to cyber threats? So we realize that as much as we're excited about the fantastic possibilities of a fully digital economy, we have to be aware of the dangers.
Definitely. One vulnerable area that needs stern attention is how individuals and companies can protect themselves against online theft.
Right. Think about it. Each transaction in a digital economy is essentially a piece of data residing in the cloud. This opens up potential for online theft, right? How can we prevent this?
To start with, there's a term that has been buzzing around: encryption. It's the process of converting information or data into a code to prevent unauthorized access. We could take a leaf from how banks operate today. The security measures banks use to protect our funds can translate really well into a digital setup.
I'm interested in how this would change the approach of governments. John, you've been talking about government regulations earlier. Can you throw some light on this?
Absolutely. Governments can't be passive viewers in this transformation. They need to establish not just guidelines, but laws for data protection and cybersecurity. Companies holding our digital information must prioritize security, safeguarding each unit of data. Violators should face severe consequences. After all, what's the use of efficiency and convenience if it's not safe?
All of this leads us to one crucial point. We've already seen the aftermath of cyber breaches today. Data leaks resulting in financial and reputational losses, and in a fully digitized economy, the impact is much larger.
I see. The wolves could be in anyone's backyard. So remember, folks, while enjoying the conveniences of digital transactions, let's hope that the right regulations are in place to keep our hard-earned money secure. So if we're thinking about a digitized economy, would wealth distribution become more equitable?
In theory, it might. In a digitized economy, wealth could be more transparently tracked and perhaps better regulated. Moreover, a digital economy could potentially remove barriers of entry for people historically neglected by the traditional banking system, making it more inclusive.
John, you're right about the potential for inclusivity. But don't forget the digital divide. For those in rural areas or who are unbanked, is it really that simple? Won't we first need to ensure equal access to digital devices and internet infrastructure?
Indeed, Bo. Achieving digital equity would be a precondition for reaping many of these potential benefits. But let's consider another perspective. Could a fully digitized economy lead to even greater disparities, especially in countries with weak regulation on wealth transparency and tax evasion?
Great point, John. So while we can mull over how these societies' norms might be disrupted, it's also critical to discuss potential solutions or steps needed to ensure that things don't go south too quickly. So we're talking about societal norms, huh? Well, from my side as a web developer, I've noticed how people treat cash as almost redundant these days. Could this become normal or even the standard?
Perhaps it could be a gradual thing. For instance, there was a time when credit cards were a novelty, but they're commonplace now. This may shape a hierarchy based more on tech savviness than wealth or status.
Interesting point, John. But such a shift might give undue advantage to certain groups. Those already tech-savvy might soar, while those with limited access might lag behind. Isn't there a danger of creating new disparities?
Valid concern, Bo. There might indeed be more disparities. The question then is how we ensure access to tech education and equal opportunities for everyone. Much like ensuring every citizen has access to education and basic amenities, digital literacy could become a right rather than a privilege.
Things surely would sound different at a marketplace, right? The sound of cash registers would give way to silent transactions. But would going completely cashless leave us more vulnerable? I've always wondered about that.
Certainly, there would be vulnerabilities in handling transactions entirely online. Yet, we already trust our banks and credit cards with daily transactions, don't we? There's room for robust cybersecurity measures to safeguard this new society.
I'm curious, though, how would such a shift impact personal interactions? For instance, would a kid's first experience with money be swiping a digital card instead of counting coins at a candy shop?
That could probably be true, Bo. It would drastically change our perception of money and how we interact with it. These shifts would carry inherent challenges and opportunities, making it critical for the next generation to adapt accordingly.
We are at the doorstep of a huge transitioning to a digital economy, right? A lot of our lives have moved online already.
That's true, Javier. And in this shift, different components play a critical role. The key one here is technological adoption. Does that mean everyone should suddenly become computer whizzes?
Not necessarily, Bo. Technology adoption goes beyond that. It's not just about being good at using a computer or smartphone. It involves understanding how to thrive in a digital environment. This could mean learning how to protect ourselves from online fraud, understanding how digital currencies work, even basic things like making sure our devices are protected against viruses and malware.
Right, that's a good example. But what about infrastructure requirements? We've depended on physical infrastructure for so long. How does that change in a digitized economy?
Infrastructure's role in a digital economy isn't minimized, it's just different. For instance, the internet will play a big role. Everyone should have access to fast, reliable internet. Digital payment systems should be robust and secure. But more than that, we'd also need legal and regulatory systems to protect consumers and maintain fairness.
Seems like a lot to tackle, but then again, isn't it always the case with big shifts? Do you think there are also opportunities in this transition?
Absolutely, Javier. It's not just about overcoming challenges. A digitized economy can create new jobs, stimulate innovation, and make financial services more accessible to people. But the key here is preparation. We need to equip ourselves with the skills and knowledge necessary to navigate this transition successfully.
Imagine what happens to economic growth in this world.
Given the shift towards a digitized economy, we could see productivity gains due to increased efficiency and cost-effectiveness of digital transactions. This could potentially fuel economic growth.
But what about inflation or deflation? If everything becomes digital, how would that affect the value of money?
Interesting question, Javier. Well, deflation could be a significant risk in a digital economy. Cash increases in worth during deflation periods, as the amount of goods that each unit of money can buy is higher. But in a digitized economy, there would be no physical currency for value to rise.
Right, John. And digital currencies, due to their decentralized nature, would also pose unique inflation issues since they're not tied to a central authority. So, controlling inflation could be very different in this system.
What about when economies crash? In a world completely digitized, do you think we need something to fall back on? Something like physical, tactile money?
Remember, Javier, that physical cash also has its drawbacks during economic crashes. But of course, in a digitized economy, the safety nets would need a rethink. Perhaps digital currencies need to be coupled with robust economic policies that can provide a safety net in such scenarios.
Realistically, though, a balance between digitization and retaining core elements of the traditional financial system might be the most practical approach for the foreseeable future.